Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome, Leonard.
There. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yeah. Yeah, like what I was talking to you about earlier,
Yes.
like the political opinions.
Yes.
What can you say about that?
Conjured.
Yeah, it's
Conjured.
conjured.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter which one you side on. It's still a conjured.
Yeah.
But
It's
what's the difference between somebody who still holds on to the conjured self and somebody who's gotten through the shift?
well, there is the sensation of a collapse or a falling away, as they call it. But it's not a collapse or falling away of anything in particular. It's
Hmm.
just an energy of the reverse of the contraction. You know that contraction.
Ah, yes,
It's
yes.
the reverse of it. It's an unraveling. So in a sense, it's kind of a falling away.
That's how they talk about it. Like there's no more resistance. It. So let's say the person likes Donald Trump. He's not gonna. What do you call this? He or she will not hold back. He's gonna do what he's supposed to do. Or he likes Biden. He just gonna. They're just gonna support whatever the, what do you call this? Whatever it feels like in terms of preferences, right?
Yes, preference. Yes, because
I see.
it believes in free will, choice, accord, and volition of its own. Because it believes it's living a life of its own. It claims everything it comes in conscious contact with. It claims all of the five sensory modalities: hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, smelling.
Mm.
It thinks in terms of I'm a separate seer, I'm a separate smeller, I'm a separate taster, I'm a separate feeler. See, it thinks in terms of terminal uniqueness. It's in that modality and that mode of mind ownership proclamation. It's always thinking in terms of my life, what matters to me, and then it holds on to the me, the I, individuation, and then it believes in separation in dualities this way. There is
Mhm.
somebody else out there. There's a society of others. It doesn't understand what one without a second is, or the seeker is the sought. It doesn't understand
Mhm.
these Zen quotes, these Zen quotes that were used to be perceived as though they were great spiritual teachings from dead masters like Ramana Maharshi and all the others from India. Uh,
Okay.
they even said themselves, Advaita Vedanta is not a teaching. The guru devotee, the ashram, all that's not necessary. In other words, the sensation that you are already like a glass of milk, or you are already coalescing, you are already Brahman, you are already that which is the absolute, because you're already blending. You are going along with the current, the flow of all that is and is not. You're already
Mhm.
going with the flow. But once the sense of separation, a sense of a separate self, interferes with what already and is not, is and is not.
Yeah, I see. I just, so you're like, what do you call this? They all talk. They say there's no causality on it, on this, right? It's just gonna happen when it's time, or when the waking up happens. It will happen. Nobody can cause it. Nobody can, no matter how many sad songs one goes to. It will just. Or sometimes there are stories of some people who never went to any satsang, who never went to any Zoom meeting or whatever. It just happened.
The collapse,
The
falling
collapse just
away.
happened. So it
Yes.
means it doesn't have a difference if let's say one goes to self inquiry or goes to Zoom meetings of different people, or one goes to grocery store every day, it doesn't matter, right?
because
Everybody
it is
would.
because it is always. In other words, all ways that are conjured, all ways that are thought about. It thinks in terms of my thoughts, my ideas, and that it can share those with others. See, it's already in separation. It already thinks in terms of one, and then there's another one, and then there's another one. But the
Mhm.
message of non-duality Advaita Vedanta says one without a second of
Mhm.
anything else.
I
See,
see.
so the dualities are reinforced in terms of I'm thinking for myself, and the reinforcements were through philosophy such as this: I think, therefore I am. That's a very
Mm.
strong one, a very strong reinforcement of the separate sense of self to believe this, because it begins with a learning, and then I learn something for myself so that I can know it. And then once it's learned, then it's known, and then it's reinforced by beliefs. So it
Mm.
seeks these beliefs that support, gathers them for itself, because it believes in improving on another version. It always thinks in terms of improving the self, self help. Um, I'm going to find something that's going to help me be a better version of myself. That's why the self help books they're always looking for those, because I want to reach enlightenment. I want to reach liberation. I want to be more than what I think I am. I want to be calm. There's no becoming necessary. Never was any becoming. There are no higher states of awareness to reach higher levels. If that's
Mm.
how it's going to arise and appear, and if it's true with reincarnation, then so be it. But nobody knows. It's unknowable. It's relegated to that which is unknown. There is the absolute Brahman, that is the Maya, that's appearing as impermanence. And the impermanence is all that is conjured to, by, for, from, about, with, upon, around, before, and after that which is not. We are not that thinks in terms of its own life and its living. There is just life, but it interferes to say, no, I am living my own life because I know
Mm.
it. I think about it. So I have my own mind to think about in my own life. I have free will, accord, and volition. Nobody is going to tell me otherwise. And so it takes on all types of beliefs. It says, well, I'm either a Republican or I'm a Democrat. And so it makes all these decisions in a societal structure that it believes in. It believes it's part of society. It was ingrained when it took on this idea that then I should know what I need to know. It takes on information as though it's a necessity. It's a necessity to know that which is going to help me know what I need to know, and I'm going to reinforce what I know and turn it into a belief. It's always about the self-centeredness. It is very, very self-centered. So the message of non-duality comes along, and it witnesses that, and it will never understand it. It will never comprehend it. In fact, it will mock it. It will ignore it. It will not understand it. It's likened to the blind leading the blind, that's mentioned in some of these spiritual teachings and texts that were brought to the Western world from the East. So then they branched off and they turned it into other modern religions. Of course, the source of the Vedic Vedanta and the Upanishads, these writings were thousands and thousands of years predecessors to these new religions that showed up later, such as Christianity and all the others, even the New Age, even the so-called New Age movement throughout the 80s and 90s before the internet. With the star seeds and the wanders and all that, and yes, those are beliefs, belief systems. They all have
Mm.
conditional steps to take. How am I going to reach the next density. This is third density. To reach fourth, fifth, sixth density, and on and on and on. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to know. I'm going to put a chart. I'm going to draw a chart, and you can follow that. See, it's always thinks in terms of what am I going to get out of life? Mm-mm. It's just life lived through the appearances of the conjure self, but it conjures self-importance. It conjures what am I going to get out of what I know, and it's going to lead me somewhere.
So
It's
basically,
the idea of a heaven. It's going to take me to a heaven, you know.
so that near death experiences of people who went through, because it seems like there's similarities with a lot of those, like it's all bliss, it's all beautiful, and then they came back and then it's not yet your time, it's still mind, right? It's still conjured. it's
Yes,
not it's not like the absolute, like after you, because it's still perceivable. It's still perceived, it's still, and then there's this study of children, thousands or hundreds of children who remembered who they were in the past, who remember they really made a research where
Maya.
that's Maya.
Maya is very good at that. Maya is very good at convincing, and this is what this dream is about. When Jim Newman and other non-duality speakers refer to the dream,
Mm,
and what the dream is Maya, and it's the mental thought system. It
mm,
it perceives the individual as somebody special and unique, and it gets them to believe that. It gets them to learn it and then know it, and then reinforces a belief and self-identifies. The mental thought system says it remembers that particular body mind as the thought about in the past as a body. It always the imagery in a mind that is thought to be a mind of one's own. So it entertains any thoughts that are conjured in the
mm,
mental thought system of the mind. So it takes consciousness, it says, to itself. This is why self inquiry, self realization is mentioned in some of this literature thousands of years prior to Christianity and all the other beliefs. Self realization, there is a science to self realization, and that self realization goes into the self inquiry. And once it has recognized that, then the collapse and falling away just naturally, apparently appears to occur. Now, there is no timeline to follow, there is no levels to achieve in the collapse. It is always collapsing, collapsing, and collapsing.
mm,
What collapsing is the unraveling of all the conditioning, of all the learnings, ever since it had that sense of a separate self and it felt helpless and it was a baby infant and in its innocence it was simply being. It was already naturally being. It was, and it will continue on and continue on, and it's a continuation. This is referring to the infinite, the continuation where there's no beginning and no end to anything. It's the alpha and omega. The alpha and omega is that there is no beginning to anything and there is no ending to anything.
mm,
There is no beginning to nothing or no thing, and there is no ending to no thing. It's a constant continuation, but then it appears finitely. The infinite appears finitely as a dream, and the life that was running its course is apparently appearing as though there is permanence, but there is not. There is both. There is permanence and impermanence in the world or the reality that's conjured, but not of it. In the world as a manifestation, temporally temporary, for an indeterminate duration in space and time and not of space and time. From nowhere, out of nothing, not born, not dying, but from nowhere, out of nothing, manifesting for an indeterminate duration in the dream, in Maya, in the dream,
mm,
and no time involved. because that which is absolute Brahman is timelessness, boundlessness.
I see. It's just, I think the Maya really likes the dream, and it's gonna keep the conjured self within the dream, and then everybody says it's preordained, like everything is preordained. A lot of people said it's, what do you call this, it everything is preordained, so
Predetermined.
yeah, predetermined. Whatever is gonna happen is meant to happen, and there's just the illusion of you deciding things to happen. What is your view on that?
Nobody's decided on anything. Nobody decides the fate of anybody's fate because there is no fate. There is no destiny. No beginning and no end. That's Alpha and Omega. That's the infinite. So the infinite is always appearing finitely via the dream and via all those delusions. And that's why it's so easy for the conjured self to slip into that mode of me, I, mine, my life. I know, I am. All of that's unnecessary, never was necessary. And that is what the Buddhists are referring to, the self-afflictions of needless suffering. Even Siddhartha, the story of Siddhartha, and all of those teachings, those ancient teachings, were turned into teachings because the conjured self believed that it was helpless and needed to find the guru and needed to find a spiritual teacher. So it began to seek for the guru, the instructor, the teacher. How do I live my life, guru? How should I live my life? Can you tell me? Can you tell me how I can reach enlightenment? See, that's how the guruing, it mistook the Maya. The Maya was so convincing that it turned the word that was simply the word of the, the representation and innumerable representations of the absolute Brahman, all that is and all that is not, the empty fullness, everything saying it. Everything is unconditional love, or all is unconditional love. No conditions necessary. You don't have to seek a certain mantra. You don't have to prostrate. You don't have to have a vegan diet. You don't have to follow all of these conditional rules and regulations. Life is simply unfolding, and everything is just arising as it always is, always moment to moment, moment to moment to moment to moment. Same, the same, the same, the same, the same. No difference. One without anything else. It's already always, always. It's already complete. It's whole. But the conjured self interferes and says, no, that can't be it. I'm going to have to keep seeking. I must keep seeking because I don't believe it. So it gets stuck on either believing something or not believing something.
But
It believes in what is thought to be so. It believes in what is thought to be permanent, but it does not understand what is not so. But that is included. It is so and not so. It is and it is not. But it sticks with what is because it believes in permanence. It believes in all the illusions that Maya represents and the dream. It believes in the dream. I'm going to make something of this dream, and it's going to be for me because I believe I have a destiny or a fate of some type. Because I want to reach spiritual enlightenment. I don't feel fulfilled. The me, never satisfied.
but the seeking, the seeking the guru, the asking, the believing in the dream, it's also Brahman also, right? So it's not it's also because it's everything. If there's no separate objective reality, then the seeking, the seeker, and the believing in the dream, it's also the Brahman appearing as that. Am
Yes,
I?
it's the infinite appearing finitely, but it's
Mm,
always, always that way. It can't be any other way that's thought or conjured or believed by a separate individual or entity that thinks
uh-huh.
it knows what the ultimate, what the absolute in Brahman, it believes, it thinks it could know what that is. It's unknowable. It's indescribable. It can never know that, because
Mm.
then it's trying to single it out into something terminally unique or special for itself. It's always looking for something in the dream that it can use for itself, to, by, for, from, about, with, upon, and around itself, because it feels that it's not fulfilled yet. It doesn't feel complete. It's not satisfied with the ordinariness that's already appearing. It's already set up. The absolute Brahman is always, always. But it thinks in terms of single items, single things. It thinks of some things, something that it could hold in its hand, something substantial. This is why Maya and the dream is so convincing. The conjured self starts believing in all these conjurings that it sees. It cannot comprehend. It's trying to know it. It's unknowable, but it's trying to know that which is unknowable, and it's stubborn that way. It's going to keep thinking that, well, I haven't sought enough. Maybe I didn't find the right guru or spiritual teacher. I got to keep looking more and more, seeking. It gets addicted. It gets addicted to the seeking, because it's so uh, enticing.
Mhm.
It's like it's enticing. Here, come here. It's kind of like looking into the mirror, and then thinking, well, that must be me. How do I look today? What is one of the first things when the body mind action figure, when the conjured self wakes up in the morning, it goes to a mirror? Oh, you're looking a little rough, a few extra lines on your face or whatnot. It thinks in terms of superficiality. It thinks in terms of that which it sees with eyes that are not its own. It mistakes. It's a mistake. It's a mistake on that which it's taking the dream to be real. And so it envisions itself and self identifies with that which is simply a manifestation, a reflection in a mirror. You're not that. You're not that which continues to keep telling you, well, it should be this way or it should be that way. It's always thinking in terms of conditions. The conditions have to be just right for me. And maybe it might be all right for you too. So let's go together and form a group so we can go seeking, you know?
So that group of let's say Starseed, I know you've been to that Starseed, and it's not easy to. I don't know how you got out of it. How did you? It's a strong. Yeah, that's ET 101, the cosmic in instruction. uh,
See,
I don't know. How did you get out of that, or when did that? Because that story is really strong, right?
it is
And
it is very
until now,
it's very alluring. It's one of these manifestations that Maya uses in this dream. And then that's how it became construed, as though it's a test. Is this a
it,
test that I need to pass?
it seems like another form of God. Our ascended masters, Pleiadians, or whatever, Arcturians, angels. It seems like another form of what do
Conjuring,
you
yeah.
call
It's just more
conjuring.
conjuring because it thinks it needs to know that. It thinks that it needs to come up with all these fanciful ideas that there are other Earth-like planets. It's already mentioned in the Gita, but it doesn't have to be exalted. It doesn't have to be reinforced. It doesn't have to be turned into a teaching. Nothing has to be turned into a teaching to simply be. You're already a representation of the absolute Brahman anyway, regardless of whatever's conjured. So you can conjure till the till the conjured self, the manifestation takes its last breath. It'll
Mhm.
keep conjuring more and more and more. That which has yet to collapse, fall away, and die before it actually dies. In a sense, when you say death, nothing really dies. Nothing is born and nothing ever dies.
Mhm.
Nothing is ever born, nothing ever dies, because there is nobody that was born and there was never anybody who's going to die. There's just simply the appearances of living entities or living creatures. You can call them that, but they're not separate. They're all coalesced. It's all the same. It's the same. It's just like saying, in terms of, you know, the cupping, the walling. In terms of, if you see single items and you think that these are separate things that you're looking about in the scenery, it's still the dream. This is all the dream, and you're not a separate dreamer. You're not a separate dreamer. I'm not a separate dreamer, but there is no you and there is no I. There is no fixed position in space and time. It's all temporally temporary. I'm not here, you're not there. There's everywhereness. There's no fixed positions. We can look at a map and we think there's a longitude and latitude mark. And if I walk from this room to the next room, I'm here right now, and then I'm going to go there. And once I get there, then that turns into here. So you see,
Mm.
you starts thinking in terms of specific coordinates in space and time. It can't comprehend every awareness because it's stuck in that constriction to think, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I need to wait a minute because I am so anchored to time. Time, it means everything to me, to the me, to the me and to the I. It thinks in terms of time as though there is not enough time for me to live before I can find enlightenment. It's
Oh
already
yeah.
liberated. It's already awake to being awake, aware to being aware. It doesn't need to seek anything. It doesn't have to seek anything. It never did. It's just
Ah.
it just simply to simply be. That's fine. Simply be, but it's never satisfied. The conjurer still continues to think that can't be it. The ordinariness. There must be something for me to know, something else I need to know, because I don't feel that I know enough. I need to know more. So it looks for the next thing to learn, and the next thing, and the next thing, and then it starts getting addicted, and then it suspends that collapse. That collapse, it's suspended. It's not, the energy is not going to collapse. The energy of the idea of me, of terminal uniqueness, of individuation, it's local quality of consciousness energy that's locked in to the idea that it is, that it just simply is, and it has a beginning when it was born, and it'll have an ending when it dies. It thinks in terms of time. There's not enough time for me to live. It starts thinking in terms of me. It's all about me. It's all about what I need, my wants, my desires. It
And
doesn't
it's not.
understand.
Like,
Well,
I was thinking like, what would I say? Yeah, there. Not everybody is like, let's say the some people are drawn to the mystical, metaphysical. Some people are drawn to being religious. Some people are drawn to Advaita. Some people are drawn to here.
you're not
Some
that which is
people,
drawn. You're not that which is drawn to anything.
so it's just like one mind talking to each other, talking to himself.
It's
One
no
mind.
different than the dog barking or the cat meowing or the bird chirping. It's chatter. That's all it is. Sounds. And we think we understand it because then we have an agreement that we understand a language, that this body mind and that body mind has a birth name and a birthright. That body mind is comfortable and responds to Leonard, the forename Leonard, Richard, Leonard. See, it's conditioned to believe that, and because it learned it. What it learned, then it knew. It became a knowing. Then it took what it knows and reinforced it with beliefs. So it was looking for signs, it was looking for books, literature, anything
Mm.
that would reinforce the idea that I'm a special, terminally unique individual, and that I can become more than I am because I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. So you see, it starts spinning dualities about itself, and it can't understand that everything was already as it always has been and always will be. No beginning, no end, Alpha and Omega. It cannot comprehend that. So since it cannot comprehend, it just simply goes with what it learned, what it believes it learned, what it believes it knows, and it just goes based on that. That's it. I had a beginning when I was born. I have a birth certificate to prove it. It has my name on it. See, it thinks in terms of my money, my life, my family, my everything, ownership, proclamation. Nothing has to be proclaimed. Nothing has to be proclaimed. Nothing has to be owned. The feeling of ownership, because it feels insignificant. It feels unfulfilled. So it goes out on a spiritual quest to start seeking. Because the falling away and the collapse. The falling away collapse is an automatic response that returns, in a sense, it's returning that innocence again and unraveling all of the conditioning ever since it began to think in terms of, oh, the moment it started saying, this is my hand, that's my other hand, these are my hands, this is my body, therefore this must be my life I'm living. So at some point it thinks of that, and I wouldn't even call it constriction. I would just simply say it's a separate sense of self that developed. It just simply
Mm.
developed. And when it did develop, it believed in its own development because it was told that, it was taught that, it took on whatever it believed was happening. It started believing in happenings, that life is happening to me, when life is just happening. Life is lived through these manifestations and appearances.
And life is also not happening for me. It's just
That's right.
happening,
It's not
right?
two by four. It's not two by four from, about, with, upon, around, before and after anybody. Nobody. Nobody is more special than anybody else. It's just the appearance. So once that self identity begins to develop, the terminal uniqueness, and I believe, see, I learn something, then I know it, and then I believe it. So how do I know what I believe? They're both kind of interplaying, interchangeable, the knowing and the believing. So those are always interchangeable because it wants to perpetuate that it's the dreamer. There's just a dream. It's just Maya. It's just illusion. It's not a test. It's just the infinite, the absolute, the infinite appearing finitely. And the finiteness is simply manifestation that's temporally temporary. And so, is there anything to do about that? No. Nobody can do anything about it. Nothing is required to do about that which is and is not. Everything and no thing is inseparably so and not so. In the world, but not of the world. You see? And it's never been any other particular way. It's always been always. Always, always. It's always, always. No beginning, no end. Alpha and Omega, continuation over and over and over. It appears as though it's a cycle. It appears as though the infinite universe is clockwork, and that there's a galactic center, and that there's billions and billions of countenances is measurable, like grains of sand on every beach on the planet. There's clockwork. You have billions and billions of galaxies, and then in those galaxies there are billions and billions of solar systems, and then in those solar systems there's billions and billions of Earth-like planets, and the countenance is immeasurable. That's unknowable, though. That's as far as the scientists, astrophysicists will ever be able to go. It cannot know this. So what does it do? It theorizes. It professes that everything can be theorized. The big theory of everything. Where have you heard that before, right? The
Yes,
theory
yes.
of everything? Really? Do they know this?
No. It's a
No.
theory. It's a mental construct from
It's
another
yes,
mental construct from another mental
that's right.
construct.
It's unknowable and will always remain unknowable, regardless of whatever the conjured self conjures up for itself. It's always going to conjure something that it doesn't understand because it needs to know it. It's not happy with what's unknowable. It has to turn every unknown mystery into something. So then it conjures up all these different books and
Hmm.
theories and ideas, and that goes on. Is it wrong? No, it's neither wrong or right. Just
So
simply apparently appears. Hmm?
yeah, so it
Apparently appears
doesn't
because
matter. It doesn't matter if
Nothing matters.
the conjured self drops before you die, the physical body
Yes,
dies or not,
yes.
because it
But
doesn't have a say on it also.
that's just an appearance. That's just an illusion. That's just a dream. But there are no separate dreamers dreaming that. See, it's a
Why?
paradox. The paradox, it appears, is because it's the infinite appearing finitely, but temporally, temporarily, for an indeterminate duration in space and time and not of space and time. All
Mm,
that continues on like that, on and on and on and on. It's like the Russian doll. You open one, there's another little doll in there. You open the other one, there's another little doll. It's like the fractal. You see the fractals examples in nature that's been allegedly billions and billions of years long before the appearance of the human form, the human corporeal form, that began to question. The first time it began to create this sense of a separate self, a sentient being that questions, what am I? Who am I? And however that began, doesn't matter. It never
mm.
did, because it was all conjured anyway.
Yeah. In the afterlife, that's also conjured, right?
Yes.
The
And
hopeful.
yes, hope is trying to create hope for itself. It wants to hope that my existence, my awareness, what I believe is my own awareness, it just can't understand and realize, recognize that it just simply is awake to being awake, aware to being aware. It is going along with the current. It is a representation of the absolute. It's already a representation of every awareness, empty fullness. You can call it whatever you want to call it. The non-dual,
Hmm.
the Neo-Advaitin, he's already saying this. And all these satsangs that are held, and all these Zooms. But I tell you, when it is turned into something that's for skillful means or something that can be used, such as those Neo-Advaitins, such as the name of, I'll give you an example, Lisa Cairns from Australia. Lisa Cairns now says there is non-duality philosophy. No, no, there
Maybe
it's simply
because
there's
maybe
simply the
because it
fact of
appeared.
non-duality. It's not a philosophy. It's not a skillful means to use, because then it starts doing what? It suspends the collapse, and the collapse doesn't happen. So it starts orbiting around itself to say, "Yeah, I know what that is. I know what this message is. I know what non-duality is. Yeah, it could be turned into philosophy because I'm going to use that for me. Now I'm going to form a group of others, and they're going to attend my Zooms, and then we're going to call it non-duality philosophy now. It's kind of a corruption. It's a corruption of this. See, this was around thousands of years ago. What corrupted this? The guruing and the devotee, and you have to wear orange robes, and you got to prostrate, and then you got to kiss the master's feet, and then you got to eat white rice, and you have to follow a vegan diet. You have to say certain mantras. That's how the message got corrupted. It is, in a sense, it's interfering. It's like the double slit experiment. The observer distorts, causes a distortion in the experiment. Once there is no observer, then what already is continues on to already be as it is anyway, regardless of what's conjured. Mm-hmm.
Because it sounds, because lately there's a lot of like this Zoom meetings like this that emerges. It can really turn into a another form of dogma or philosophy in
Which
a
is
way.
precisely, and that is happening because the conjured self can't help itself, because it can't believe that it's this ordinary.
Yes,
It's
yes.
this plain. It's obvious. It's so obvious that it gets hidden in the obvious. The message of non-duality, of what is and what is not, gets hidden in the ordinariness. So it's hiding there. It's hiding in the ordinariness of what simply is and is not. It's trying to turn everything into something. Everything cannot be turned into anything, because everything is both everything and no thing. Nothing stands alone. The seeker is the
Uh,
sought. Whatever can be perceived is not what's being perceived. There are no separate perceivers of perceptions. There's no separate dreamer. There's no separate. There is no separation of anything. Everything, no thinking, and no thing, everythinging. Oh, I don't know if you've heard
Hmm.
that one
This
before.
is
Huh? Everything,
this.
no thinking, and no thing, everythinging. And so the conjured self goes, huh? That doesn't make sense. That sounds like craziness. You know,
Hmm.
it doesn't make sense. It has to make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense, then it's not true. So I'm going to move on to something else till I hear something that makes sense to me and for me. See, the conjured self's always thinking of sensibility and logic and substantiation and finality and causality and something that has substance. It doesn't understand of non-local. It doesn't understand of that which is unobservable and unreal. But it is
Hmm.
both. It always has been both, always will be both. It is both real and unreal, observable and unobservable, knowable and unknowable. But what does the conjured self do? It sticks to what it believes is real, it sticks to what is observable, and it sticks to what is unknowable. So then the constriction gets tighter and tighter and tighter to the point of where it drives itself literally insane. And then what does it do? It takes its own life that believes it was its own life. It just takes it out. It goes, finds a garage, you know, turns on the car, and just falls asleep. There. Now what? What happens next? Nothing's going to happen next. Nothing has to happen
Yeah.
next. There is no next.
Yeah. When you were talking up just now, while you're saying all of that, this conjured self is picturing an image of, in a movie, there has to be a protagonist and antagonist, like a murderer, a murdered, a hero,
The
and a
thief,
watcher. It's all of it is the witness.
the thief, and the police are the same.
Yeah.
This conjured, the thief and the police are the same.
And let's say in this body, Leonard or Richard or whoever, it doesn't
Birth
have a
name and
choice.
birthright, birth certificate. Yeah.
It doesn't have a choice, right? If your role is meant to be a murderer, you're just gonna be doing it whatever happens, and but you're not that. You're just the choiceless awareness from it, because in Maya you cannot realize good if there's no bad, so it has to be in a dream where the opposite has to be created. So in a way, I was thinking of this is what it means by there's there's no free will, because basically it has been ordained already that this is your role. So
Well,
this is your.
whatever apparently appears to arise is going to arise anyway, and it's just the every awareness appearing as the infinite appearing finitely, however anything appears to be. It just arises as however it's
Mm,
going to appear. But it's not a particular appearance. It's when
okay.
the conjure self begins to conjure the idea, well, wait a minute, what type of appearance is this? So it gives it a label and it categorizes it, and it has to do that because it only self identifies with that which must be. It must be a particular way to be. I must be
Mm,
a particular way to be, so I haven't found that yet. So I need to conjure it. I need to conjure something that has meaning, reason, and purpose when nothing has no meaning, reason, and purpose. But however, the conjured self is not it's not satisfied with that, and it hears that
yeah.
message. It hears it and ignores it. It hears this message of non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, but it can't comprehend it because it's trying to think from that which it is not. It's trying to think in terms of thinking. I want to think about it. And what I'm thinking on my own, by myself. Nobody else is thinking the way I am. I have a very unique way of thinking. Nobody else can possibly do that. You see, so it thinks eternal uniqueness, and then it spins that and keeps going, keeps going. It's just like a radio broadcast, of a radio station. You got K Leonard, you got K Richard, you got K Paul, you got K Tony, you got K, all these different K Jim, and it just listens to itself broadcasting the same old thoughts that it entertains, and it's just like a broken record. It just keeps going on and on and on. It hears its own thoughts. It takes on its own thoughts. They're just thoughts, but it takes them to be their own thoughts. Then it takes life and takes it personally. Everything is personalized to
Yeah.
the conjured self that conjures that idea that it is separate, it's totally unique, that it had a beginning when it was born. Birth certificate reinforces that. Then there's a death certificate when it dies. But it fears death. Why does it fear death? Because it forgets everything is already resolved. Fear is the acronym. Forgetting everything is already resolved. And what has been resolved? Well, it's not a final resolution. It's a continuous resolution, a resolvementing. Everything is ing. Everything is energy. Everything is an energetic movement. But it's not a particular type of energy. It is just simply energy. But the conjured self's not happy with that. It needs to call that energy something. It needs to give that energy a name. So it comes up with names and titles and categories, and it wants everything to be in neat little boxes, little containers. I want to take everything that I think is separate, and I want to put it in all these neat little categories. And I also want to balance the scales of knowing what I know and then what I don't know. So here's all my knowables here. Here are all my unknowables. You know, it's got to be like that. It's got to be like duality. It has to be a dualism. And there are innumerable dualities to choose from. And that's the way that the conjured self lives a life that it believes it's living on its own terms, its own terms and conditions. I'm living a life of my own terms and conditions. I'm sure you're doing the same. You must see you, I, the me, groups also. Not just the I, the single I, and the single me. There's groups of conjured selves, such as them, or us, or we. You see? So it
Yeah.
always thinks in terms of individuality, but there's groups of individuals that get together in agreement. So there's this agreement that there's a societal structure. There's an everybody and everything else reality out there. And so here I am alone. Here I am alone. I feel separate. You know, I feel like nobody understands me. Nobody knows me. Say me. Always about me. Always about I. My wants, my needs, what matters to me. And it finds somebody else that thinks in terms of there must be somebody else that thinks like I do, or at least close to it. So it forms these little clubs, these little groups, and it spins off like that. And it goes off
Yeah.
on other tangents. Forgetting everything is already complete and whole, perfect and well balanced. The beloved, the unconditional, the empty fullness, it's always that way. It's always, always. But the conjured self does not recognize that. It's too busy conjuring.
Yeah. And when you talk like this in society, you're a heretic. You're gonna be shunned by it's the Maya is really strong. Like if I talk about this in a video, nobody would agree, or our people will
Because
because
they believe in the dualities where either I'm going to have to agree with you or I'm going to have to disagree with you, regardless of what the subject matter is. Because it's thinking in terms of subjective ideas, subjectivity, and thoughts. It lives in a world of dualities whereby everything's got to be subjectively so, and there's objects that I could talk about and refer to them as subjects. So the conjured self is looked upon as though it is a subject to talk about. And the objects that it believes are separate, it has plenty to go on. It has plenty of information to conjure. Information. It wants to take everything that's already so, but it wants to form it. It wants to add to that which doesn't require anything to be added or removed. Nothing has to be added and nothing has to be removed for everything to simply be as it appears, as it arises, as it apparently appears to arise, as the infinite appearing finitely. And so it's fine the way it is, but the conjured self's not happy with that. It's not happy with what it sees and what it thinks it sees, because it's thinking in terms of what I think I'm seeing. So it takes eyes of a body mind, it takes the eyes, and it says, these are my eyes, and this is my brain, this is my mind, and this is my life I'm living. So I need to do something with that. So it lives in a world of doings and knowings. And then it takes what it's doing and what it knows and turns it into belief. So then it looks for others that believes that I'm separate and there's others out there. So I'm going to look for the ones that think like I do. You see, and then it forms those
Yeah, it likes
those.
belongingness.
Yeah, I don't feel like I belong anywhere. Why do I feel like that? See, it's even asking itself, how come I feel so isolated, so different than everybody else? I'm looking for somebody that's just like me. So and then it starts thinking terminal uniqueness. Wow, I guess there's nobody else like me. That makes me that special. So then it becomes a legend in its own mind. And so it goes off like that. And then it turns into these figureheads and these conjured selves, such as, I'll give you an example, David Icke. There's an example. This David Icke has conjured the idea that the queen and the royalty are all reptilians. Really? How do you know that? You see,
There's a lot of videos about how, what do you call this, reptilians or
conspiracy
whatever.
theories, conspiracies. Yeah, it
what
likes that stuff. It loves drama. The conjured self loves all that kind of stuff. It lives for that. It's
Mhm.
always looking for something that's sensational and dramatic, and that's why it loves soap operas. A lot of these conjured selves really get into the soap operas. The and
But what if the just to like play the devil's advocate, but the other side of conspiracy theory is also a conspiracy because it's also not real, right? It's also it everything is a conspiracy theory in a way, but like it, because I've seen a lot of people who researched about it and presented like facts. But it's still part of the movie of Maya anyway. I mean, how do you like, I don't know how to navigate through that. It's a dream within a dream. It's a belief inside Maya, or
yeah,
like.
yeah, it just appears over and over and over again and repeats as though it is repeating, but it's not, because the conjured self is trying to look through eyes of knowing. I know that.
Mm,
I see something and I know what that is. But it's not a knowing. But it's
it's
not convinced.
another.
It thinks it's a perceiver perceiving a certain perception, interpretation of what it's seeing. It takes the
Mhm.
eyes of the body mind and calls it my eyes, instead of recognizing that it already was other than what you think is. It already was
Mm.
what you think it is, but it really is not. It's not that which is thought to be a particular way. So everything that appears is not particular, it's not specific. It's just always, always. But
Yeah.
that's not good enough. That's not good enough for the conjured self. It has to make everything into something. It has to turn nothing into something. So so it's all busily engaged in its own life that it believes it's living, and it's saying everything has to be something, and nothing has to also be something. So I have to turn nothing into something, and I have to turn everything into specific things within everything. See, so it's looking for specifics and particulars, because I am looking, I am observing, I'm the observer, I'm the dreamer. So the dream has to turn out the way that I want it to turn out, because I say it should. So it lives in a world of
Uh-huh.
reality of me, my perspective, my viewpoint. Now, if it finds others that believes there are others out there, that's separation. And so it finds others that think the way it does, because it's believing that. It believes that others are thinking the way they are. And then there's agreements, and then they start going off on that kind of separation. But it's not going to lead them anywhere anyway. Even if they
Huh.
think they're going to get somewhere different, it never happens. Well, they tried anyway. They tried, like, just like you were referring to, the star seeds, wanderers, all these different sensational things, other extraterrestrials, other races, conspiracy theories. All of that doesn't matter. It never did. But if it appears to
Yeah.
matter to the conjure self, it's going to go off and do that anyway. But
I see. I
it's not
get
going to
it.
get anywhere. Yeah.
It's like an unnecessary, what do you call it? How do I put it? It's like, let's say, whatever the conjured self decides to believe, whether it's a conspiracy theories or not, it's a new age or a religious one, it doesn't matter.
It
It's
never
because
did.
it
It never
never.
did because it was just conjured. Yeah, it doesn't hold any validity. It doesn't hold any substance. It's not a finality of anything.
Yeah,
Nothing
like
could be
it's
nothing singled out. Nothing stands alone. Nothing, no thing stands alone. There is no separation. One without a second. The seeker is the sought. You can't
you
go
must
anywhere with that.
imagine.
There's nowhere to go with that because you don't have to go anywhere, and nobody has to go anywhere. There isn't anybody going
Mm.
anywhere else. There's
Because
just
yeah,
everywhereness.
because society and being practical, it's hard to do this. It's like the beggar does not have any difference with the king or the rich one because it's just that, right?
Well, there's no doing involved in anything, but it lives in a world of doings. It thinks it has to do something about life. It thinks it has to do it, and it
Ah.
has to apply it to itself. It thinks it has to turn life into something. Life is just life, however it arises. But that's not good enough to the conjured self. It needs to conjure the idea. No, wait a minute. That has to mean something to me. So then it gives it meaning, reason, and purpose. So that which the conjured self believes, so it goes on with that. And then it believes it has free will and choice to believe that. So it reinforces that belief, and it gets stuck in a loop like the dog chasing its own tail.
Yeah. Yeah, like how about you? How about how after
There is
the
no you.
dropping?
There is
How
no
about
you. There is
Richard?
no me. You got to nip it. No, I'm saying, are you nipping it? No. Just recognize there is no you and there is no me. It just appears. Appears as though
Mhm.
Leonard's sitting in a chair and he's talking in this headset, and that Richard's
Mm.
over here sitting in this chair talking into this microphone. And then we're holding an event, and this is a separate event. And then everybody else is having their own events. So
Mhm.
some people might be sleeping. See, it thinks in terms of separation that way, that everybody is doing what they want to do in their own time. See, so it takes time, and then it takes that to be something that's substantial, something that matters, something that's significant. So it looks at importance, it looks at significance. Oh, how did you sleep last night? Oh, did you sleep a certain way? Really? Okay. See, it believes in all these specifics. And so it has a conversation about some type of duality, some type of condition that's going on. And it
Mhm.
just doesn't recognize that everything is just going to rise and keep being the same old, same old. And you know what Paul Hederman calls it? And it's always funny because he uses a comical approach in his songs. He says this: ordinary dog shit awareness. You know, because Jim Newman once said, everything is dirty underwear. He actually said that in one of his songs. If all there is dirty underwear, then all that is underwear. Dirty underwear appearing as dirty. That's everything appearing as dirty underwear. But you know what? To say it like that, that's kind of going into what is going to be perceived by the conjure self as radical non-duality,
That's extremely radical.
extreme non-duality, radical non-duality. So it's going to make it out to something because it can't simply say, look, it's just a fact. All right. Non-duality is a fact. It's simply saying everything and no thing inseparably so and not so ad infinitum, and that there is nothing but the absolute Brahman, which encapsulates everything, always, everything, no thinking, and no thing, everythinging, and leave it there. But no, the conjure self cannot leave it anywhere because it thinks it has to leave it in a specific place. Wait a minute, where did I leave my
Yeah.
car keys the other day? See, a place for everything, everything in its place, a place for everything. It thinks in terms of places, coordinates, in space and time, that everything has to be in a particular order. No, this is everything appearing as though it's order. And then
Mm.
it could also appear as though it's chaos or chaotic, that there's no order to it. It's both. It's both. It is and it is not. It's order and it's chaos. It's all of it. Well, it's always, no matter what the self conjures up, it's that and more.
Uh, it's the I. This is what I it's the end of context. Like I remember like
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to somebody about this, like
Mm-hmm.
let's say Alan Watts, Robert Adams, or Muji or Osho. These people have been debunked by
You
people,
know,
and then
Muji, you can catch the Mujiing. And I'll tell you how Muji is Mujiing. Like this. Love sprinkles. Love sprinkles. That's Mujiing. Love sprinkles. You ever seen him do that?
yeah,
You ever seen
yeah,
him go
yeah,
like that?
yeah,
Love
yeah.
sprinkles. That's Mujiing. That's all that is. It doesn't mean anything. There's nothing significant about Mujiing.
Yeah, because there's like a misconception that
They
when the shift
and there are self-conjured cells kissing his feet.
what I'm sorry.
There are self-conjured cells kissing Muji's feet.
Yes, yes.
What
Ah,
is that
yeah.
about? Is that
That's all.
necessary? No. But then it's still happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the Pope when they had the Pope mobile, and back in the 1980s, he used to parade around the Vatican. You know, you could take a few little run the Pope mobile, and then he put out his hand to the people, and they were kissing his ring.
Mhm.
Huh? Is that necessary? Well, it's neither right or wrong. It just apparently appears to be what's happening. Does that matter? No, not really. But to the Pope, does it mean anything? See, this is what the conjure self's looking at. It's witnessing the world out there, and it's trying to make sense of a world. It's trying to separate and segregate that which it believes it is seeing. So whatever it believes it's seeing through its own eyes, that it proclaims because it's claiming its own body and its own life, and that I had a beginning when I was born, and I'll have an ending when I die. But whilst I'm still alive, see, I'm alive. No, there's just aliveness scene. It's just life. But the self-conjure self lives in that world of duality, of conditions, of what's happening to me. It can't just recognize that life is just life, and it can't recognize just aware to being aware and awake to being awake and leave it at that. No, it can't. It cannot. It has to make it out into something. So it has to make life about me in some way, because I have to
Mhm.
find purpose in my life. So I'm going to go out into a world that I believe is separate from me. It's all illusion. It's all a play in a dream. It's no different than the sleeping dream. This is the awakened dream. This is the awakened dream that nobody wakes up from. You know, when you hear Jim Newman say that, that's what he's referring to. The dream that nobody awakens from because there's no separate dreamer. Mm?
Mm.
Mm?
Nobody
There's no
wakes
separate
up.
dreamer to be found anywhere.
Nobody wakes up from. It means the shift is also the dream. It's also part of the dream. Like the conjured self dropping.
Dreamings. Dreamings. That's
Mhm.
more like it because energetic movement of dreamings,
Ah, I
which
see.
creates the appearance of a dream. So you've got this, it's almost as though there are separate dreamers, but they're in agreement, dreaming the reality that appears as it does. But in the agreements, the self conjures the idea no, it has to be a particular type of dream. See, this is where it starts interjecting a duality or a condition or a certain type of something specific, and that's separation, and that's duality. So then it trails off in that. It doesn't get them anywhere anyway. You're just going to lead them right back to where nothing. You might as well start at nothing.
Ah, yeah.
You might as well start at no thing because you're going to end at nothing anyway. Who's going to end at it? No, nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing nothing, are they? Is there any doing that's required for nothing to be nothing? Hmm? Yeah.
The what I always remember with what you say is the milk analogy where you cannot separate the milk
The milky
particles from
substance
water, the
from the
milky
fluid that
substance.
it's in. That's the same to say that a drop in the ocean, you
Yeah,
know?
even if you get a glass of water and you bring it in the land, it's
Yeah.
still that's the illusion, right? That it's in the
Yeah, yeah.
glass.
So the neo-advice, the non-duality speaker is likened to a a man in a river that's going to sell you water from that river. Let's say there's a Colorado River and he scoops it up and puts it in a glass. Here's
Yeah.
some of the Colorado River. You can take this home. And you could say you have the Colorado River. No, that's not the Colorado River in there. You know what's missing? The
Oh.
riverine. You
Ah.
can't contain the riverine in a glass of water that was scooped up from a river that's flowing. You got the Colorado River, and who's calling it that Colorado River? Oh, well, that's a particular river. It's just a river. But no, they got to name it. See, the conjure self has to name everything that it sees because it believes in separation. It believes in duality. It believes in objects that are separate objects in separate coordinates in space and time. It lives in a world of separation and terminal uniqueness and specifics. And this is I'm here, you're there. It only thinks in terms of separate coordinates in space and time, and it's never been that way. So it separates everything because it feels comfortable doing that because it thinks it's doing it. It's not doing anything. It doesn't have to do anything. It doesn't have to be anybody in particular because it is nobody. You see, it's given it its own name and its own significance when it's born. How does it get it reinforced? There's other conjure selves from a previous generation that are indoctrinating that newborn baby. That newborn baby doesn't realize what's in store for it. What's in store for that newborn baby? More of this, more conjuring. And so it perpetuates it. The next
But
generation,
yeah.
it perpetuates the conjuring and the significance of individuality. And so it reinforces duality. It reinforces that I'm the seer. I'm a separate seer. I'm a separate doer. I'm a separate knower. I'm a separate feeler. I'm a separate hearer. See, it goes on with
Mhm.
separation and terminal uniqueness. That I'm the doer of my own life. And so therefore, my own life is more significant than somebody else. Now you might be close to the way I am, but I feel I might be either maybe I need to catch up with you in some way. So you see, it thinks of significance that way. So it makes these differentials and these comparisons, it conjures them. Why is it conjuring them? Because it believes it has to conjure them. It believes it has to so they can have something else to do, something else to look forward to, and perpetuate its own terminal uniqueness. And then that's more separation till it gets to the point of where it drives itself crazy because it believes it's doing that to itself. See, all self-inflicted. This is why. This is why this works. Self-realization. Because once you study the science of self-realization, then you'll get to the point of recognizing there never was a self to begin with. There is no self. Why not start there? Save you a whole lot of trouble and a whole lot of money going on all these spiritual retreats.
Yeah. It you mentioned indoctrination. It all came from the mind, right? It branched out from one thought, and then it became belief systems. It
Yes,
became
yes. It was a mind.
until
It was a mind that thought it was significant, a mind of its own, and then it thought it was going to be a spiritual leader. So it opened up its ashram. This is what happened in India. The message got corrupted. All the messages that have ever been said got corrupted. Even the one that the figurehead, teacher of righteousness, master of justice, Jesus Christ, his message got corrupted. All the great sages, the dead master, it's getting corrupted. It's just what apparently appears to happen. Now, is it a bad corruption? Shouldn't be happening? No, it's just what apparently appears to happen to this message, the non-duality, Advaita Vedanta. It gets corrupted. So you have that message being corrupted. Does it matter? No. It's just recognized that there's a corruption that apparently appears to happen. It's not a right or wrong. It's just what apparently appears to arise. And you'll hear this in non-duality circles, no matter which neo-Advaitin you hear speaking of this, Advaita Vedanta, taking the original Sanskrit in the Hindi tongues language, because it was the word spoken, and then from the word it turned into scribed Sanskrit, and then a direct translation from Sanskrit to the English language or any other language it's spoken. Andreas Mueller, his first language is German, so he's sharing the message in Germany with those that are thought to be, groups of Germans, but it's still the same thing. No matter what part of the planet this message is shared.
Mhm.
It's just these are facts that are being shared. They're not for anybody because there's nobody for this to be associated with. There's nobody around. You know, there is no separation. One without a second. The seeker is a sought. Whatever can be perceived is not what's perceiving. So that's kind of the mantras that the monks in Tibet, you know, in India, are chanting. I am not a body. I am not a body. But that's not even necessary. But they do it anyway. What do they think they're doing? Well, they think they're chanting. Why are they chanting? To humble themselves. Why are they humbling themselves? See, you have to keep with a why and why. Why are you doing this and that and the other? None of it's necessary. To simply just be awake to being awake, aware to being aware. That's it. That's it. That's simple. That basic. But that's still not good enough for the conjured self. It still needs to go on seeking, so it gets addicted and continues to say, you know what? I heard that message. Doesn't make sense to me. See, there it is again, the me. It has to make sense to the me. See? Or else it's not true. Or else it's not so.
That's powerful. Like there,
Yeah.
what's perceiving is not the one perceived. I forgot. I think I
Yeah.
tweet.
Whatever could be perceived is not what's perceiving. In other words, there are no separate perceivers of perceptions. So whatever perception is thought to be perceived, it's not that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like
We're not that.
the knife cannot cut itself.
We're
It
not
can
that.
cut anything, or it can cut anything, but not itself.
We're not that. That's double negation. That's what's
Ah,
referred to as double negation. In the ancient teachings, the non-corrupted ones of the very first Upanishads, those are untainted. Those are not corrupted because they seem to be so complex. They're so far removed from the conjured self. But once the conjured self encounters the Upanishad and it studies it and learns it, and they go, oh, and then it goes like Tony Parsons. Wow, there's a lot of wow going on in Tony Parsons, you know, satsangs. In the satsangs, there's a lot of
mm,
wow. So that's what that's referring to. That wow, that just awestruck. Wow, you know, and that's what he's referring to when he reacts that way. You see him as though it's his reaction, but that's not his reaction. He's just recognizing it's a recognition that everything is just amazing. It's a mystery, and yet it's an open secret, as he says. Because
mhm,
remember how it was. And the action figure, the birth name and birthright of Tony Parsons, he was once walking in a park. And then the collapse, the falling away, Tony Parsons died. Then it was just a walk in the park. And then after that, it was just whatever apparently appeared to happen. And so that's what apparently appeared to have seemed to have been an event that happened to that particular body mind action figure with the birth name and birthright of Tony Parsons. And so then you have Jim Newman, and then you have others. And it's just a sharing, this urge to share this message. It is so catchy in a sense that once it's recognized, the this sharing is a natural response to all that is, all that the absolute. The reaction is to share it with those that are still self-identifying with a separate sense of self. So this is why there's such a strong resurgence, and this is why it's a message that's going to turn into common knowledge eventually. Because at
mm,
first it started as a whisper, so to speak. It started as a still small voice. This is the peace that surpasses all understanding. Really, really think about that one. When I say think about it, I mean consider it. Recognize that peace means it surpasses anything that could ever be conjured and thought about, which is any understanding of anything, any kind of subject that's conjured, any subject that can be talked about, a separate subject of anything. But there isn't any separation, see? So the bottom line, there is no separation of anything.
mm,
It's
mhm,
just everything, no thinking, and no thing, everythinging. You know, it's these Zen one-liners. You repeat those silently. Don't even
mm,
say them. It's the unspoken yes. And then just remain there in the silence, and that's fine. because you're already being, awake to being awake. It's not even a separate being. It's just awake to being awake, aware to being aware, coalescing like the glass of milk. You're already coalescing, blending with the absolute in all spaces and all times, not just in space and time as it's thought about on this planet, but all Earth-like planets that are even unknowable throughout the infinite universe. Because it even says in the Gitas, there are billions of billions of Earth-like planets that are just not knowable. They're not attainable. It cannot be known how many, countless. Just like there isn't anybody that can count every single grain of sand on every single beach on the entire planet. The countenance is immeasurable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ends the question actually when you say just abide in that. Because not
That's
that's
fine.
the peace that surpasses
The
all
peace that surpasses
understanding.
understanding. Can one say any more than that? That pretty much sounds like a good summary right there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
See?
exactly. Yeah, it's really the
The final
yeah,
answer.
that's
You're
it.
not going to. You don't have to seek anything else. This is the final answer to all the seeking. That's why the collapse happens so immediate and so sometimes so subtly that the self-conscious self doesn't even know it. It already collapsed even before it
Yeah,
recognizes it. Then
I was about
once it admits it and says, "Oh, I did die. I never was. I never existed. I was never born." This subjective idea of that birth certificate that has that name, I'm not that. That was conjured. Sure, it was. Yes, it was all just a dream, and it still is. But guess what? The dream's going to be a happier dream now
Mhm.
because it's going towards that peace that it already was. It was the
Yeah.
peace that surpassed all understanding anyway. So it was going to be the ultimate death of itself eventually. And so that's
Mhm.
what this message is all about. That's what the Advaita Vedanta, that's what it's saying, is that there is no separation. And there's one without a second. And it's everything, no thingy, no thing, everything and no thing inseparably so. And not so. You can't just say inseparably so and leave it there. Because the conjured
Mhm.
self's gonna make that so and turn it into some kind of soness. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I was about to say like I wish everyone can listen to this, but I think the destiny of all is really this. It cannot escape the open present or the
It
seek
doesn't
it.
need a wish to already be as it is.
It's already is and
It
is
already
not.
is. So every conjured self that self conjures the idea that it's separate, it's going to eventually admit to this, that everything is already as it is, simply this, empty fullness, everything and no thing, inseparably so, not so, everything, you know, it doesn't even have to say this after a while. After a while, it gets a lot quieter.
Yeah,
Then,
yeah.
so once the message has been shared, it recognizes that there isn't anything else it has to say. And then what does it do? It goes off and it retires somewhere, and you don't hear from it again. When I say it, I'm talking about the representation of a body mind action figure, and you see that, but that's not a separate. It just apparently appears to be a separate body, but it's not separate from anything else. It's just part of everything else that shows up. Scenery, manifestation. It's just appearing, but it's going to disappear. It's no longer going to be observable in mirrors eventually in time. With more time, it apparently appears to be going by. Because why? It's not of space and time. So it's going to appear in space and time, temporary for an indeterminate duration. It's going to manifest and appear. Just like a fire, you see the flame, but eventually that little flame starts lowering, lowering, lowering. It's like lighting a candle, or an hourglass. You put the hourglass has got sand at the top, so to speak, using these analogies like that.
Yes, yes.
That's what's truly what's going to apparently appear to happen. So that which begins to collapse and fall away and dies before it's no longer going to appear. And it's not even a death anyway, because nothing ever dies. So this connotation with death as a finality, it's not so. It's not a
Mhm.
finality because nothing ever ends. Why does nothing ever end? Because nothing ever began. Nothing ever began and nothing will ever end. Alpha and Omega, always, always. It's going to be a continuation over and over and over again. Now, could we call that forever? No, it's not even that. It's not even forever, because then forever turns into to become a subject, and then somebody writes a book about forever.
Yes, yes.
See,
Huh.
the self contra self can't help itself because it thinks, well, the self can't get out of itself, so it might as well get used to it. So it might as well be its best friend because it's never going to separate from that. It can't separate from that because there is no separation. See, that's why it is self realization. Although there is no self, there's still the idea of a self. So you might as well make peace with that
Mhm.
self that you're going to carry the rest of the life that you think you're living separately from everyone else. So you ever hear these expressions, sometimes I talk to myself, sometimes I talk out loud. So that used to be construed as craziness. They would lock up a person and they
Mhm.
would think that they need therapy and they need help. And, they need a psychiatrist to take care of them in the hospital. They have a mental illness.
Mhm.
When they start saying, I'm hearing voices. Well, those voices simply turn out to be that separate self. But then it goes so far as some of them are so self-absorbed that they turn into serial killers and they turn into the devil made me do it, and it turned into
Mm.
all these excuses. That's what they are. They're just excuses that are conjured because it's trying to find a scapegoat so it doesn't point to itself to take responsibility. It doesn't have to take responsibility to anything because it's not really, it's not really being separate of anything. It's just simply an appearance of a human corporeal, local quality of consciousness energy form that happens to be called corporeal, but that's simply the language that is used to identify that which is apparently appearing. It's making an apparent appearance. Eventually, it's not even going to create, not really make anything, but it's not going to cause a reflection in a mirror. It's going to disappear. Now, the question is, will it reappear? No. No, because
Mhm.
why? Nobody knows that.
Yeah.
So it's a paradox, see? All of it begins to be a paradox. And no matter where any idea is taken or starts, if an idea begins and starts, it's not going to end anywhere. It's just going to dissolve. Just like a thought is a representation analogy as clouds going by in the sky. The sky is a representation of mind, but not of a single mind or a specific mind, just mind, which is just consciousness. Okay, so you could say uh, the absolute is just consciousness, or the absolute is unconditional love, or the absolute, is empty fullness, or simply this. And so the clouds that are going by, you don't have to entertain and turn those clouds into a bunny rabbit or a horse, or you see a form in it, right? Well, that's what the self-contra self does. It takes thoughts as though they're clouds. It's
Mhm.
it's what it believes it has is its own consciousness, which is the sky. But the clouds don't affect the sky, does it? It doesn't ruin it. It doesn't leave a mark on it. Fireworks are shot there, planes go through it, storms happen. It's like the movie screen. Is another analogy to use. All kinds of movies are shown in that same screen. Well,
Yeah.
the mind is like that. But the mind is not an individual mind. It's just mind. It's just consciousness. So whatever apparently appears to be placed upon it, if it's thought to be imagery of these manifestations, then it's going to be like a movie played out. And it's going to think that it's part of that movie. You know how some people get into movies? Some
Mhm.
individuals, when I say people, I'm referring to those that are still conjuring the idea that they're a separate person. And then I'm part of society. So I'm going to go turn on Netflix and I'm going to watch a movie because that's what I want to do. I want to entertain myself. So that's all it's really doing. Even if it's
Mhm.
conjuring, it's just entertaining itself. It's what apparently appears to be that which is entertaining itself through the life that is thought to be led by the separate sense of self or the conjured self. That's one way of saying it. Mm-hmm.
Especially if the body has physical pain, it starts to
That's just
believe.
pain. That's just the
Yeah.
body bodying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
body bodying. It's just pain that is sense felt, but it's taken personally. The conjured self, the self-conjured self always takes that which it self-identifies with. It believes that that's a body of its own. So whatever pains it feels, it says, that's my pain. It claims everything.
I caused it. Because I was not eating right food. Now I'm sick. It's because of me.
No. Sickness apparently appears to happen. That's all that. It's just sickness going through the body. It'll pass. This too shall pass.
Yes.
Yes, this too shall pass. You may
Yeah.
have heard that statement before.
Yeah, a lot.
There you go. So that's it. That's it right there.
I wish I can rewatch this. If you post this on YouTube, I'm gonna rewatch this.
Yeah, you can because see this is Satsang number 5.
Yeah, number 5.
This is going to be Satsang number 5. Now, just as these recordings, there's nothing special about this. It's very similar to all the other non-duality interchanges, interplays, where there apparently appears to be participants. That's fine. That's fine. Is this going to help somebody? Well, it might, or it might not. It doesn't really matter if the self-conjured self recognizes it or not, because everything's already the way it is, as it is anyway. That's how it doesn't matter, and that's how there is no meaning, reason, and purpose to anything. You see? That's how and why it's that way. However, it appears to arise. That's the how and the why. Because you always hear in satsangs where the questioner, and the satsang is held not for a meaning, reason, or purpose, but to starve the questioner of anything. And that's the same as what was going on with the self-realization, the self-inquiry, the ancient teachings and practices. Same thing, but now placed in a modern setting, so to speak. And using the English language instead of the Hindi, instead of the chants, instead of going through the guru. Now you get a direct hit. That's why Paul Hederman says a bitch slap. Then bitch slap. You get a bitch slap if you go to his satsang. That's just a way of saying it. Oh, I'm going to get something out of it. So see, he kind of draws the conjure selves to think in terms of, I'm going to get something out of the satsang if I go to Paul Hederman's satsang. You're not going to get anything out of anything. There's nothing to sell. Like Tony Barr says, he says, there's nothing to sell. There's nothing to buy, sell, or trade. If you feel like you're moved to donate, fine. And even Paul Hederman makes a joke about it. Thank you for donating so I can live my lavish lifestyle. See, all he's simply saying is just being congruent with that which is just kind of innocent to all of this. The non-duality message has yet to make sense. It doesn't have to make sense, but once it does make sense to that separate self, the separate sense of self, collapse, dies, and it happens. It even appears to be an event or a happening. So the conjured self still gets into the habit of thinking in terms of time. Well, it was an event and it was a personal experience, and you'll hear some of these conjured self describe it that way. Oh, it was a personal experience. I can remember when it happened. I mean, even this particular body mind action figure has said this in other satsangs, but it's a way to appeal to that which feels separate, you see, and that which is still struggling and grappling with the message of non-duality that simply states the absolute. You are a representation of the absolute. Everything and nothing and separately so and not so. The seeker is the sought. There's nothing to seek anymore now, because the peace that surpasses all understanding has always been that way. It's always been that way. Even whilst the conjuring was going on, even while the conjuring was apparently appearing to go on. Yes. And
Yeah.
so it is and it is not this way. So this is and this is not. We are and we are not. It is and it is not. I mean, you could take all the pronouns and you could turn this
Mhm.
into the non-dual message because it's going to all roads lead to the unspoken yes. All roads lead, all paths, all spiritual paths, all the seekers, they're all going. It's almost like going home. You're finally going to
Mm.
go home because you were off to war. You know, you went to some
Mm.
foreign land because it seemed like that. You were lost. You were lost because you were such a seeker. And so you're gonna find your way home eventually. You may not realize it, you know, that you that conjures the idea that it's a separate you or a separate me, conjures the idea as though it's alone. That feeling of aloneness fall away, collapse as well. Then it'll recognize that it's simply already with all that is. It's already part of it, but not a separate part. It's just already coalesced like the glass of milk. It's already coalescing. It's an energetic movement of coalescing. It's timeless, boundless, endless. It had no beginning, it had no end. Alpha and Omega. It's with that. It's with the absolute. In all spaces and all times. Even if the reincarnation story was true and that entity recognized and woke up in a planet light years away from Earth, it will have no recollection of this Earth life that it led. Even if it was
Mhm.
like that, and it was conjured some fanciful science fiction story, that doesn't even matter. It
Mhm.
won't. Because it's going to recognize that everything's already interconnected. It's already coalescing. It's an energetic movement. It's clockwork motion. So it doesn't have to be labeled anything. It doesn't have to be called anything. Everything doesn't have to be labeled and separated into separate things. You know, that's why it is said the cup is cupping, the wall is
Yeah.
walling, the body's bodying. Everything is inging. Everything is an energetic movement. It's inging. Always, always. It's always, always.
Yeah.
Everything, no singing, and no thing, everythinging. Hmm?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we're just going to keep, you know, beating that dead horse, so to speak.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like that.
Yeah, it's going to be like that. So it's okay to repeat, though, you see? It's all right to repeat because the conjure self needs repetition so that it'll eventually unravel and admit it. It'll admit to itself that it's not really a separate self. It's just appearing along with everything else
Yes.
that is and is not. Mm. All roads lead to non-duality, so to speak. All roads lead to everything, no thinking, and no thing, everythinging. No matter where the conjured self took itself and dreamt, it thought it was a separate dreamer, so it was dreaming a separate dream other than the dream of Maya, the illusion that's already around, the infinite appearing finitely as a dream. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Thank you. Thank
All
you for
right.
your time
That's
today. It's
okay.
really
It's not my time. It's nobody's time. It's timelessness. So I really don't have any time. You don't have any time. Nobody has time. Time is just apparently appearing to be moments going by, you know, and this idea of time is just a subject, an idea, something else that could be discussed, but there's just timelessness, there's boundlessness.
Mhm.
Yeah, there are no set parameters. We're all appearing as though we're appearances in space and time, but we're all not of space and time. When I say we're all of it, because we're a representation of everything with it anyway. Yeah, so
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you try to go with this because there's nowhere to go with it. And nobody can take this anywhere because nobody
Yeah.
is anywhere taking something somewhere and then going to place it and bring it somewhere else. There is nowhere else. There's only everythingness or everywhereness. Everywhereness seeing. It's always energetic movements.
Mhm.
Yes. And every Sunday, we can continue to do this. And now, uh, the reason why uh, we're going to try because if it happens, it does. If it doesn't, that's fine too.
Mhm.
So the message of non-duality, it feels as though we are organizing together and then trying to get this, as though we're trying, as though we're a representation of something that needs to be stated, something needs to be said. What needs to be said? Not necessarily needs to be, but there is so much needless suffering going around, a lot of mental anguish of these individuals that believe that they are part of their own, doing. In other words, they're not doing something right, so their life is not turning out the way it should, and you always see that kind of reaction based on those that are self-conjured selves that believe they're living a life of their own. See, it's needless suffering going on, and it self-perpetuates that because it thinks life is doing something to it. You see, life's just
Mhm.
happening. It's just happening. It's just psyching itself out. It's conjuring these ideas that it's not good enough or it's not fulfilled. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Mm.
Mhm.
Well, I need to go wee. Is
Yeah, sure. It's been great having you here.
that all right?
Yeah, sure, sure.
It's almost an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay?
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's okay.
Bye.
That's okay. We'll talk again.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Bye.